Hello and welcome to Community Connection. I'm Iowa City Mayor Bruce Teague. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to grow, and as summer nears an end, parents have been wondering, what will school look like? The Iowa City Community School Board made a decision that it would not be safe to bring students and staff back to the classroom at this time. But just a few days later, Governor Reynolds signed a proclamation that says schools must prioritize in-person learning. Here to help me unravel the confusion is Interim Superintendent Matt Degner. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Yes, well, there's a lot happening in our city and especially within our school district. So I'm going to jump right in there because I know that there's people out in our community that wants to know about what's happening, especially when it comes down to the discussion surrounding the school board and how do they, come to that decision to have online courses. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So thanks for the question, Bruce. And again, thanks for the opportunity to speak to everybody today. The decision to start the year offsite or through a virtual format was one that had been under consideration, really since we started the planning of this process in May and June. The district was tasked from the State Department of Education to come up with three different learning models. One that would be the one that was selected, an offsite model, one that is a hybrid solution, and then preparing for on-site instruction as well. And so we've been working over the last several months with large teams of teachers, administrators, community partners, really trying to work through those return to learn processes and plans. And then as we got closer to the start of the school year, and as we've seen some probably more problematic data and numbers come through the county, and from working with Johnson County Public Health, we really felt, and again, probably with some of the students coming back and the lack of ability to be able to predict what was going to happen there, that the health and safety component of that made us feel it was best to start in that offsite environment obviously with the goal of trying to get people on site. We want our students in classrooms, we want our teachers in classrooms, but we want to be able to do it in a health and safety minded way. And so as the board considered, I think, all those factors and took our recommendation for that approach to the school year, we had a unanimous vote on it from the board. I would say we've heard from lots of staff that are extremely pleased with that decision, lots of parents that were very happy and relieved with that decision, but of course, also some families that are really upset or that really frustrated by that decision because of the challenges that we know it creates for our different parents and families and students by starting the school year at home.
I watched the school board members and how they really had a challenge navigating through all of the discussions based on some of the things that you mentioned. It was no easy task for them to do that, but they did come up with the online decision, which I understand that our governor initially has said she's going to leave it up to the school districts to make their own choices, and it'll be they need to make the choice for their community. So that happened on Tuesday when the school board did that, and then on Friday, the governor came out and said, nope, we're going to take over control a little bit, and we're going to say 50% in classroom learning. Did you all have any idea that that would happen?
Not at all, Bruce. I think that's been part of our frustration is receiving that guidance extremely late on the 17th of July was problematic as we've been engaged, like I talked about, for 2 or 3 months in this work. To have kind of rules change late in this process has made it extremely difficult. We were working with the best information we had with the guidance we've been given throughout the process. We've been doing weekly webinars with the Department of Ed, and so to have that announcement on Friday really kind of shook the core of what we were working on and what we were working from. And so now I think what we're tasked to do is look at a waiver. I think they're a little hesitant on calling it a waiver, or essentially, I'm not sure what that word that they're going to land on for what that process looks like, that we need to work with our local Department of Public Health, the Iowa State Department of Public Health, and the Iowa Department of Education, that if we would want to begin in a model that is less than 50% of instruction happening in person. So That could even affect our approach to how we had planned the hybrid, which would have been our step into on-site instruction. It would have technically been less than 50%. We do think there's some things we can do to try to work on that and show that we are meeting a 50% threshold in that hybrid model. But of course, in a totally offsite environment, we wouldn't be meeting that 50% threshold. And so we've asked for a meeting with them to get that reviewed. They've shared that criteria wouldn't be available to August, but we're actively working to try to get a meeting set with them to have our plans reviewed and to submit a waiver just as soon as we can to see if it's allowable to start in that fashion.
Time is of the essence, right? Because August 24th is when the in-person learning is supposed to go into effect. And so I know that the school board, of course, is going to be meeting to discuss this further. What are some of the things that you're thinking? Because if the waiver doesn't go through, then you have to do the in-person learning at the 50%. So just want to know what your thoughts are and what the school board is planning for that in-person learning.
Sure, and so that's some additional pieces we'll try to continue to share this evening to the board. Just trying to talk from the things that we've had out previously. Our hybrid model, the last hybrid model that we had discussed that we were landed on, would have included an A cohort of students and a B cohort of students that would have went to school on a Monday, Tuesday. Say the A students go Monday, Tuesday. There's a remote learning day on Wednesday, and then the B students come to school on Thursday, Friday. So we're close to that 50%. I think our job now is to tweak what that might look like to see if our model can be in compliance with what the State Department of Ed has said. But we're also still going to continue to talk about how we still feel our approach and our decision was the right one at the time, and that we still believe that it's the right one, and that we need to try to pursue the avenues open to us to start school that way. But if we don't, then that's where I said we're back to kind of planning from that AB model that we've talked from and trying to see what we can do to make sure that is sufficient or in compliance, or what kind of flexibility we'd have around starting in that environment if they are opposed to starting in the other one. I think there's probably a lot of frustration from teacher groups, from administrator groups that you kind of channeled into that question before about the timing and the nature of the guidance we received. And so I know that conversation is probably still going on as well. And I don't think it will be settled without question, that there still be some districts that are in difficult spots, as you just mentioned, about getting close to August 24th and having some plans in motion. And so I think there's still more conversation to come on it. And I know we're willing to ask those difficult questions in that way too.
Well, regardless of if there will be the in-person waiver granted, you'll still have online options for students. Can you talk about what safeguards will be there for those students that totally don't thrive with online learning? Because I know that there is some concern there, and just what are some of the things that the district plans to do to ensure that no one falls behind?
Sure, and that's a challenging one, right? Because we already struggle with that even in our system. If we're being honest, when we have kids in front of us on a daily basis, we know there's kids that aren't as successful, and we know what our demographic subgroup data looks like around that. And so we know that it affects our Black and Brown students more significantly than our white Asian student populations. And so when we look at trying to plan and prepare for which groups potentially, or which students and which families are going to potentially need some support, we intentionally do that around our in-person and in our classrooms and in our teaching and in our leadership. So we need to do that same thing here in an offsite environment and try to work through those different what we call MTSS, multi-tier system of support opportunities, that we need to have an MTSS system built around offsite instruction too. So when a student isn't engaging or isn't completing coursework through an online environment, that we have several steps of intervention we take to try to engage that student and to try to meet them where they are and to try to get them thriving in that environment and engaging in that environment. We know that isn't going to be easy, but it's not going to come without challenge. But I think that's what our teams have been working on over the summer in the variety of these three different scenarios I talked to you about. And so that's been intentional planning as we went along, as we've tried to construct the online schedules for what would happen at home if we were going to start this way. And so I know our teams have thought a lot about that. We've had equity representatives on all of our different subcommittees so that we were approaching that with the universal design for equity as we went throughout to think about it. But we also have students that, like you said, just won't engage sometimes or can't engage. And so we need to be ready to take some significant steps around intervention to try to ensure that and help kids be as successful as they can be in this environment.
In light of equity, let's start with the basics when we're looking at individuals that maybe have challenges with internet access or a computer itself. What is the district doing there?
Yeah, and I think that one we feel fairly confident about in our approach. And so already in grade 7-12, we had a device provided to every student. And early in this summer, we accelerated our elementary device allocation model as well, so that we would be able to equip every elementary student with the device to start this school year with, whether they were on site or whether they were off site. And so we will feel like we'll be able to meet that need right away. The bigger challenge, like you said, sometimes is the connectivity access and enough connectivity access. I think we also heard that from families. And so what we've tried to do is partner with local providers like Mediacom and Verizon, and then our own district tech team to get parents and students connected in their homes where that has been an issue. And that's a request process that if they submit a request to get one of those mobile hotspots, then we work with those providers to get them set up and hooked up. And so we've been continuing to do that through the summer here. And so Adam Kurth, our Director of Technology and Innovation, has spearheaded that effort. And so we feel good about the steps there. Of course, turnaround was difficult for us in the spring when we started that because of the amount of need and the quick nature of trying to get all of that set up. But we feel like for the fall, we've been able to be planful and we'll be ready to meet that challenge. So really, families, if they're needing that, just need to contact our district help desk if they don't have that connectivity in their home, and then we can get them set up.
Yeah, so I know that the district is juggling a lot. So one of the things I think about is what happens if later this fall we kind of see the numbers for COVID positive cases trickle down within our community. What are you all having plan A, plan B for any of those transitional options so that, because we do know that in-person learning is most optimal. So what are some of the things that you all are planning as if the number should go down, which I'm hoping will be the case?
Yeah, exactly, Bruce. And I think at some point we will be on site. I mean, I think that's the reality. And hopefully that's also before we get a vaccine that the numbers are safe and that the measures and metrics that we look at are safe. I think part of the challenge, again, with what came on Friday is that locally we were working with the health department to determine what those measures and metrics might be. We had already had those on the closure end of things around the classroom, the building, and the district level about when we would close. Our next iteration of that was going to be to develop numbers for when we would come on site. Part of our work with the health department led us to believe there was no measure or metric we could develop right now that would show it would be a good idea to be on site or in classrooms. So that was a big driver in our original decision. But what we learned on Friday is that the state plans to give us those measures and metrics, and that's kind of tied to this waiver about being able to go to off-site learning, that you would have to have those standards. So we're not sure. We haven't received those numbers yet. They announced it Friday. We had a webinar on Monday, and they're saying early August is when they would like to get us those to know, again, when we would need to pull back. And then probably if we have the numbers for when we would need to pull back, that indicates about when we'd be able to be on site or when we would be expected in their minds to be on site in that scenario. So I hope that addressed that question. I think it's kind of right. Like, when do you pull back? And then also when do you feel comfortable about coming in? But we were determining them locally, but now it says some of that guidance may be coming from the state.
Well, COVID is novel, and so is the position that the school board and even the staff with the district. You're all in novel situations, and so the grab and go program for meals that students have been able to get now. What are the thoughts on extending that program here in the near future? And what does that look like?
We know food security is a huge issue, right? And that was one of when we were had the situation thrown us in the spring, like the whole community did. One of the first things we wanted to try to do was ensure food security, and so that was a huge component of our work initially, is getting grab and go sites set up, getting that staffed, getting the information out to parents, and providing that. And I think we've had a lot of success in that effort, and so we'd like to continue that. Obviously, we're committed to trying to help that challenge. There's been some concerning things coming out of Washington around, their ability or willingness to want to continue to fund that effort as we go along. I think that's probably some of their desire to have students in schools on site. And so I'm not sure what that grab and go conversation is going to continue to look like. From a backing of it, like where the source of the dollars are. I know as a district, we want to stay committed to trying to meet that food insecurity need for as many families as possible. And so we're continuing to monitor that. We feel like we're in a good position as it stands today to continue that service. And we'll continue to obviously update if anything changes on that end. But we know that's a critical part of our work. One of those Maslow's hierarchy needs, is one of the first things we need to do for our folks.
So the grab and go, I know, has been very well received by people in the community. Students have just had the opportunity to have a meal every day, and I think you even had breakfast available when they came to get the meal. So that's been something that I know has been very positive, especially when we're talking about the lack of food or food insecurity here. So thanks to the district for doing that. I know that there is an uphill battle to learn if the federal government will continue to support it financially. And so I'm hoping for the best, because our kids do matter. And right now, there's a lot of changes, and I think that will be one thing that, if we can continue, it would be great. In light
Sure.
of Black Lives Matter, I know that the school district has been having some conversations about that, especially when it comes to equity and being. I just want to know what has been some of the conversations surrounding that. What is some of the school district looking at to ensure that the conversations that have been brought to you all relating to Black Lives Matter is on the table for discussion?
Sure. I think the first thing we would want people to know and hear from us, especially our Black administrators, our Black teachers, our Black staff members, and our Black students, is that Black lives do matter. That's obviously important to us, and part of our continued commitment to them. I know that, I think it's important for me to say, oftentimes we get feedback for when we engage in these conversations, and just around, some folks, the politicization of the issue, and the conversation that people get into around, well, all lives matter, and then the Black Lives Matter component. And I think the important thing that we continue to try to talk about is, this is an intentional to saying that people that we see valued less in some segments of our society, and that their lives are taken for granted, that's why it's important to say, and that's why it's important for us as a district to make sure that our students, staff, teachers, administrators, and families hear from us. And so with that said, we're engaged in several conversations. The Iowa Freedom Riders has met with our board 2 different times, one in a work session format, and one in a smaller group setting where only a couple board members participate in a conversation with them around their list of demands and list of efforts for change in this local school district. And then there's been work session and meetings conducted around better understanding those demands, understanding what are some of the steps the district could take to look at continual improvement efforts and things that need to have some urgent attention given to them. And we're not done with that work. We're not going to be done with that work. That has to be something that we remain committed to and focused on as well. And so our next step in that is really a conversation with our own equity committee in the district that we'll be engaged with here at the end of the month or early in August. and then to really set forth some action steps that we are committed to doing. And so we've kind of held those in draft form right now, and saw where we had alignment with the Freedom Riders conversation, and maybe some space where we still have some work to do around that, or where we still have some questions to sort out. And so I see that as critical part of our work. I think equity is critical part of our work. Our system can't work for some kids and not all kids. That's the promise of public education, is that it should work for everybody. And we know that we have significant issues in several areas around that. And that has to be our work. That has to be some of the most important work, if not the most important work that we try to take on as an improvement for our system here in Iowa City.
One of the things I've been so eternally grateful for is this time with COVID-19, it has allowed people to kind of be still a little more than normal. And then we have the Black Lives Matter movement, where we have the opportunity to really have a moment to pause and to look at what Black Lives Matter movement means, what the stories of individuals are sharing, their personal stories. And I think when I've thought about the conversations related to race, that's something that it's an uncomfortable conversation. Most times we shy away from it. We'll address it really quickly and then try to, because it's uncomfortable. But right now, I think we see it across the nation where the conversation is being had, and I appreciate that the Iowa City Community School District is having the conversation for real and making some steps on how to really change the trajectory to ensure that everyone is successful to the best of the ability that can be created. So thanks to you and the district for the hard work that you're doing there. And I wanted to just know if there's anything else that you want to share with the community. I know that you all have a lot of things going on with the school district, but I appreciate you taking time to talk to me today.
Maybe the last thing I would say, Bruce, and you're welcome and certainly happy to do it. And, I can't echo what you said enough, is that, we can't let this slide to the rearview mirror, around some of our equity related work. This has to be, like I said, the critical work for us, because this is these students' one shot at their education. And so we try to come to it with that same urgency every single day. In particular to COVID, I think, we understand the stress, the anxiety, the fear that for working parents with the decision on the offsite component. We don't want that to be a long-term situation. We would look for transition points to do on-site. If we do end up on-site, we understand the fear, anxiety, and stress that comes from that, and trying to keep our kids and our staff safe in that regard too, and the people they come home to safe. And so we know that it's a very divisive issue. There's a lot of people with a lot of, I would say, data and research to support their position. And we want to just guarantee that we're working with our local partners the best we can in a very quick fashion, but also a very deliberate fashion, making sure we're not missing anything, and that we want to try to provide as much continual information and transparency as we can as a district about what the start of the school year is going to look like to set our kids and our staff up for the most success as possible.
Well, I am so happy that the Iowa City Community School District is navigating a lot, and thank you so much for being a part of today, and looking forward to hearing from some more things that is coming from the school district. So thank you so much for all you're doing.
You bet. Thank you, Bruce.
That's our show today. If you are wondering what the city is doing in response to the pandemic, you can visit us at icgov.org/coronavirus for details. We've got another episode of Community Connection coming out Thursday night about Disability Pride Month. Make sure to tune in. Until then, be safe and be kind. Thanks for watching.